whatever happens, and I think we saw it with the computer world and the information age, but now we're even seeing it with the pandemic. The library has had to pivot how it does what it does, but it doesn't pivot on why it does what it does and what its purpose is. And so I think we're very fortunate in Cambridge in particular to have a library that is so mission driven, that lets the important role of the library dictate what it does and how it does it. And I don't want to take up any more of our precious time. I want to turn it over to Maria and her fabulous staff to tell us about how they've done that.
Thank you so much, Susan. And Susan, in your honor, I have the CPL red in the background. I worked really hard at that. Thanks for having us tonight. And we wanted to make this fun. We wanted this to be fresh. We wanted to shine a light on the things that we're doing and have been doing during the pandemic, but also looking to the future, what we're all excited about, and and we thought that we would do this through the lens of access, equity, and inclusion. And I thought that the best way to really shine a light was to bring in my fantastic colleagues to this pop-up. They're the ones who make it happen. They're the ones who are doing all kinds of innovative work. And I think you're going to hear some really exciting and meaningful and powerful stories this evening. So thanks for joining us. As you know, that libraries have been challenged. And I would say that each library in its own way has risen to the challenge of how library services should run during the pandemic. I think that we've done a really exceptional job in Cambridge during the pandemic. And for example, we have performed over 220,000 checkouts of physical materials, and we've processed over 200,000 returned items since staff came back on site in June. And that includes from patrons, like all of you, patiently standing in line. This is a recent photo of a Holtz pickup line, and people are doing a great job of being socially distanced. And this was actually a day with precipitation and snow. And staff on the inside, interior, have been doing major processing and preparation of materials. So we are quarantining our materials, our items, for 3 days. And this is an example of, if you can go back just one slide, Paula, of what the floor looks like. So there's the Susan Flannery staircase, and this normally, right, this would be packed with patrons, but the whole first floor is actually packed with Holtz pickup and process, because there are just so many people who want to get their materials. So a lot of preparation happening across the whole first floor. And then if you go to the next slide, this is just bins of materials that are quarantining, that we're waiting to process until the specific day. And we have really clear signs. The materials processing folks are doing a great job with that. Thanks, Paula. So if you recall, before the pandemic, thanks to foundation support, we were able to go through a really robust strategic planning process. And we were able to talk to many of you, as well as 2,000 community members. And we distilled that feedback and we updated our mission, vision, and values. So our mission is we welcome all, inspire minds, and empower community. Our vision is that we want Cambridge to live its very best lives and to have equitable opportunities to learn, and that we support a democracy that thrives. Our 4 areas of focus are that we want to be a welcoming and inclusive place. We celebrate the culture and intellectual vitality of our community. We foster your self-development and discovery of the universe of ideas, and we connect our community and promote our shared democratic traditions. The values that relate to access, equity, and inclusion are so fundamental to what we do. And so we wanted to frame this conversation this evening around those values. So specifically, we advocate for free and equitable access for all. We engage our community and partner with others to achieve collective impact. We acknowledge the systemic inequities that have shaped our society and take intentional action to create more equitable outcomes. And we invest in our staff to best serve our community. So during the pandemic, what this has looked like is anything from doing outreach to ensure that kids get access to books, whether that's through food sites or affordable housing sites or pop-ups ourselves, um, to making sure that we're serving elders and people don't have easy access to technology, that they can get that access, to working with middle school students and partnering with community partners to make sure that we are helping them to learn math and science skills and to develop further technology access and skills as well. So what I'm going to ask the panelists to do is to talk about within your areas and your scope of work a little bit more about examples of the theme of access, equity, and inclusion in your work. But before that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our anti-racism work. So this was born out of the death, and I can't believe we're almost coming up to the 1 year, the killing of George Floyd, and how upsetting that was, I think, to the entire Cambridge community. And I think that our staff and patrons felt that so deeply. It really, highlighted for so many folks about the issue of systemic racism in our society. And staff really felt like they wanted to do something. And so we started learning and discussing, and out of that came 2 anti-racism task forces that were formed. One that's looking at both how we learn as a staff and as individuals, but also to start looking at our practices to see what we could do or change to be a more inclusive place and space for our patrons, and to start to address and combat any inequities that we saw in our practice. And then there was another task force that Muna is helping to lead, and that is around our public programs work related to anti-racism work. So not only elevating and amplifying Black and Brown authors, but also helping the community, and this is forthcoming, this is in the planning stages right now, but helping the community with programs around our community learning around racism. And the foundation has been such a great partner with a fundraiser that they're putting together, and really fantastic events coming up, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and getting additional funding by individuals as well as corporate sponsors to help us to do more work in this area. And that area with the foundation is called Voices for Justice. So I hope you can check that out as well. So I'm going to turn it over to our panelists, and the panelists. So the specific question and ask is if you can introduce yourself, so your name and title, and describe a recent major project that you have been involved in that is helping to provide greater access and inclusion to the Cambridge community. We are going to start off with Julie Roach.
Hi, everyone. I am Julie Roach. I manage youth services at the Cambridge Public Library. I know many of you, and it's good to see your faces again. Most of you know, but I think it's worth repeating that when the children's room at the Cambridge Public Library is active and open, almost half of our collection turns over every single month. We own about 80,000 items. Typically 35,000 would circulate monthly out of the children's room. The kids in Cambridge are real readers. They read to learn, of course, and for school, but they also read for pleasure. They read socially to connect with others, and they read as an escape. We are so fortunate that every branch of the Cambridge Public Library has a professional youth services librarian, and so does every Cambridge Public School. We work together to foster these young readers. We know that learning is about relationships, which is what has made this year so especially hard. For so many of our children, getting that right book at just the right time, that is what jumpstarts them as readers. And it's the magic work of a connection to a children's librarian that does it so often. So when the pandemic hit last March, a really huge challenge for the library was what to do about children and families and their access to books. We could make our programs virtual. We could do that shift. And though for our small children, that screen experience can never replicate an in-person experience, it does offer a group connection point to story and to art and song and to a children's librarian. But most children right now are relying on screens for everything. It's their school. It's their social and emotional time. It's their downtime and their recreation time. And for a long time during this pandemic, it was also the only way they could get library books. And we know that for many kids, that physical book experience still works better for them when it comes to focusing and engaging with the content. And predominantly, they still prefer it, especially right now. And meanwhile, in the children's room, we had tiers and towers of really popular, fun, engaging children's books that were trapped inside. So we had a problem. Contactless holds pickup service is wonderful. It has done such important work, but it can be challenging even for adults to use. And for kids, it becomes exponentially more difficult. They are depending on their support network at home to help facilitate and transport them. And that's very different depending on what anyone's particular circumstances at home is. So the best pivot that I think that we've been able to make for kids and families during this time is to find any kind of way to get physical books out of the library and into the hands of these children and families who most need them, but have the least opportunity to get them given our public safety constraints. So we started by just giving books away. We had about 60 boxes of books, children's books already in the library, new books that were part of a partnership with the National Book Foundation and the Urban Libraries Council. And we got them out to lunch sites in late spring and we just gave them away. And that was pretty successful. We got some books into the hands of kids. We were really proud. And then we worked with the Cambridge Public Library Foundation and we bought more books to give away. And we did that during the summer and fall. And we really got some kids' home libraries started at home, which is also important. But it only got us so far. So we went back to that collection. The children's room is full of books right now that no one can access. And we just started checking them out to the library itself on behalf of our young patrons. And during the summer months, when it was warm outside, we would check them out to ourselves. We'd make a little surprise bag and families could pick up a bag of children's books while they were passing by their local branch library. And then the weather got cold and we needed a new plan. So we again started boxing those books up. We would box them up by age category. We would pick our most popular books, the books that we knew kids wanted the most. And we dropped them off with various partners around the city where we knew our families and children were. So we were working with food pantries. We were working with the Cambridge Community Center Food Pantry and the East End House Food Pantry and the Cambridge Economic Opportunity Committee's Food Pantry. We are working with housing developments like Jefferson Park and 808-812 Memorial Drive. And we'll take them 150 50 books at a time. And then if they need 150 books the next week, we'll bring them more. And the sites there are distributing them for us. They are giving each child 2 books with the message from us that these are yours to keep as long as you need them and you can return them when you're able to. And we don't care how long that takes. And we don't care if you spilled juice on it and we don't care if you lose it. We just want you to have access to these books right now. And that's the most important thing. I always say to the youth staff when they're starting out that something they need to always remember is that the people are so much more precious to us than the materials themselves. And we always need to protect our people over those materials. So that's really what we're trying to do. Paula, if you would show the picture. that people can really see how this is affecting our kids. We have a long way to go, obviously, to replicate the kind of access that we can get when that we can achieve when our buildings are open and our partners' buildings are open and it's safe to distribute books in the way that we used to. But we've been delivering boxes of library books to these locations since January. I think we've gotten about 1,200 books out in a month. And the stories that we hear from our partners and the enthusiasm, it's what really keeps us going with this work and makes us feel like we are making a dent. At the Cambridge Community Center food pantry, we brought them 150 books on that first Friday, and they immediately called and said, we're going to need about 300 more Monday or Tuesday if you can get them to us. They told us that their most enthusiastic constituents so far had been the youth program kids who zoomed through their first round of books in one day and came down for seconds the very next. So we're really proud of this work, and we hope that it is making a bit of a difference in a really challenging time.
Thanks so much, Julie. Reinhard is up next.
Hi, my name is Reinhard Engels, and I am the Manager of Technology and Innovation at the library. And Julie used the word pivot, and we've had to pivot quite a bit in technology as well. As you, I'm sure, are aware, many people come to the library to handle their technology needs, whether it's just to use the Wi-Fi or to use one of our library desktop computers, or even to check out a laptop that they can carry around the library, or to print out documents. And when we closed at the beginning of the pandemic, that was all gone. And you've all heard the term, the digital divide. Well, this is an important way of addressing that big problem. And it only got more pronounced as we were becoming increasingly dependent on these digital tools, which all of a sudden, many people just didn't have access to anymore. And so the challenge was, how do we get this stuff? How do we get these services we used to offer out to people who desperately need them more often, more than before? And in the beginning, we weren't even doing curbside pickup. So our only mechanism really was to go out to our community partners and say, hey, do you have students who need devices? And so we formed a number of good partnerships, one with the Community Learning Center, an adult education center here in Cambridge. We were able to get them a large number of Chromebooks, Chromebook laptops, and mobile hotspots for internet connectivity. We're still working with them. They still have about 70 of our Chromebooks. They're beefing up their own fleet in the meantime. We got some to a nursing home on Dana Street so that residents could communicate with their families. We made numerous smaller loans, and it was very gratifying to quickly be able to do something with these resources we had here. When curbside, contactless pickup started, that was fantastic, because now our regular patrons, all of our patrons, could also benefit from this. And we started what we called our takeout technology program. And so what this meant is, just like a patron could take out a book, order it online, call in to order it, they could come in and pick up a computer or a mobile hotspot for internet access and take it home with them to get their computing work done. And what you see here is a picture of the first iteration of one of our packets here. We've got some beautiful branding going on with the carrying case, and the Chromebooks have this lovely plastic shell to minimize damage with some great logos on it. And we worked also very hard with our partners at the Community Learning Center to come up with really easy to understand instructions that we pass out with these, because a lot of our users are not terribly technically sophisticated. And so that's extremely important to provide that. Another service that we provide, there's a third kind of what I look at as the third basic tier of like Maslow's hierarchy of technological needs. There's There's computers, there's internet, and there's printing. And the printing took us the longest to figure out, but we're now on that too. We started a remote printing service, we're calling it, which allows people who don't have a printer at home to upload documents either from their phone or from a laptop such as this that they borrowed to our library server, and then they can pick up those printouts coming to the library along with the contactless printout service. So I'm very gratified that we were able to provide these three basic pillars of public computing to our community. That's not all we do in innovation and technology here at the library. We also do a lot of teaching, particularly in the area of STEAM. We've been working for a number of years with a fantastic partner, Innovators for Purpose, and we've built something we call the STEAM Academy. And for years, we've been offering these free classes to teenagers and junior high school kids in the community here. And they've been getting just phenomenal instruction around STEM and STEAM related skills, technology, and design. And beyond just the content, also the business processes that go along with that, the collaborative and planning aspects and design reviews that they will encounter in the real world, the grown-up world of tech work and tech-related work. And it's tends to be pretty hands-on. These kids are designing robots. They are using 3D design software that's pretty intense. So it was not at all obvious how we'd be able to continue this without being able to give them access to all this stuff in person. But again, we pivoted, and our partners, pivoted just as much with us. They are utterly fantastic. And we were able to hook the kids up with these high-powered MacBooks loaded with creativity software. We were able to tweak the projects that they're working on so that it was something they could continue to work on remotely. And to my astonishment, it's really almost a kind of miracle, in a shorter amount of time than anything we'd done with them before, they were able to bring a project from conception to completion. And I don't know if all of you have had the chance to enjoy this, but outside the library right now, we have an augmented reality exhibit that these kids put together in just a few months at the height of this pandemic. And it's really one of the most remarkable things they've done so far. And they've done a lot of remarkable things under these just astonishingly difficult circumstances. So we're so glad that we've been able to carry that forward. The last thing I'd like to talk about real quickly is, I hope most of you know, we built this amazing makerspace and multimedia recording studio called The Hive. And it took well over a year for us to put this together. And just as we were about to do our grand opening, we had to close down and talk about a physical place where you really need to be in the place to use these fantastic digital fabrication machines and audiovisual tools. And the staff so jazzed up to teach the public and give the public access to these 3D printers and laser cutters and all the other magnificent tools we have in there. We had to pivot again. And I really give so much of the credit here to my colleague, Emily St. Germain, who is our STEAM manager, for figuring out a way not just to do sort of virtual online programs to cover some of the skills that are relevant to what happens in the Hive, but to actually let students upload their designs and then have Hive staff produce those designs on the machines in this facility that they could then pick up, just like patrons do with contactless pickup of books and other materials. And so it's just been wonderful to see the Hive, even though we can't make it directly open to the public, still humming along during this pandemic. Although I'll be thrilled we can actually let people back inside again, I'm so delighted that we've been able to bring it to bear at all, and in really this quite powerful way.
So my name is Jason Yee. I introduced myself a little earlier, but I'm the Assistant Director of Libraries here in Cambridge. And one of the core tenets of our profession as librarians is the belief that we have something for everyone, whether it's story time or books or English classes or databases, book clubs, or just a safe, comfortable place to spend a few hours. Um, and one thing we are aware of in terms of access, equity, and inclusion is that even though all of our services are free to everyone, that doesn't mean that there aren't barriers to access for some folks, including some of those who are the most in need of our services. People here in Cambridge who are struggling with housing insecurity or addiction issues or mental health issues, all of which are really exacerbated by systemic inequalities, might not be able to make use of our library resources as fully as someone who wasn't dealing with these other issues would. So one thing we're really excited about is starting next week, actually, we will have on staff at the library a full-time licensed clinical social worker. She comes to us with a wealth of experience in helping individuals in Cambridge. One of the highlights of her resume was setting up the mental health court here in Cambridge to help provide support for people and keep them out of the criminal justice system as much as possible. And we're looking for our new social worker position to help us in a variety of ways. One of which is sort of directly helping patrons, helping connect them to resources available in the city, particularly around our Central Square branch. There's a number of service providers and nonprofits that have resources available for folks. But again, it's not always the easiest thing to navigate if you're struggling with these issues. Another area that we're hoping our social worker can help us with is examining our own policies and procedures to see if there are ways that we are unintentionally making it more difficult for people to use our services here at the library. You know, we come from a library background, and we might not have the perspective that a social worker could bring to see how we could make simple changes to the rules and policies that we have that could have a big impact on people's ability to use our services. Another area we're looking forward to is increased staff training to better equip all of our fantastic frontline staff to help individuals. You know, we got into this business because we want to connect people with services and resources and information. But they don't teach you how to do social work in library school. So we're looking forward to having a real expert in that realm to work with us. And there are other groups that we're really excited to have some additional support for, whether it's teenagers and new adults that are you know, struggling to find their footing in the world, of whether it's seniors that are maybe feeling isolated due to the current pandemic. Any number of groups that could really use you know, the services and expertise of a social worker. So we're so thrilled to be able to offer that through the library, and it's really a testament to the city's belief in equity and equality and access.
Thanks, Jason. Does anybody else want to share their excitement for the future?
Hi, I'm Alyssa Pacey, and I'm the archivist here at the Cambridge Public Library. First off, I know many of you, and I'm really thrilled to see you all, even if it's only virtually. So it's great to see you. And I also wanted to point out that the Cambridge Club's records are here at the library. So that's a really nice connection that we have. So one of my major initiatives over the past several years is to ensure that the collection that I manage, the collection that includes personal papers, records of organizations, photographs, family papers, archives in general, that this collection represents the diverse community that we serve. In particular, I've been working to document and make available Cambridge's, the history of Cambridge's remarkable African-American community. And 2 years ago, in March of 2019, which seems like a very long time ago, I received a remarkable donation of personal papers that documents the Johnson Cardozo family. And the Johnson Cardozo family are 4 generations of African Americans in Cambridge who led just incredible lives. They were radical abolitionists, civil rights crusaders, supporters of women's rights, advocates for children at risk. So their work and their lives touched upon all of these progressive movements in American history for the past 150 plus years. And in this collection is a family Bible of Robert Johnson, who was a formerly enslaved man who fled to freedom from Virginia, a plantation on Virginia, and arrived in Boston in 1839. Johnson was instrumental in Boston's abolitionist movement, and he was the great-grandfather of the person who donated the collection to the library. And I want to point that out and show you some images. Over here on the left is the cover page of the family Bible with Robert Johnson's signature and his descendants. And I want to point out that, you know, we are not that far removed from the institution of slavery. Just 4 generations in the scheme of history, it is not that long ago. And we are still very much so grappling with the afterlives and after effects of the institution of slavery. So to honor this amazing gift to the library, back 2 years ago almost, or I shouldn't say 2 years ago, it was in June of 2019, I held a Juneteenth celebration. Juneteenth is the holiday celebrating the emancipation of formerly enslaved individuals in the United States. It is typically observed on June 19th. And in fact, Massachusetts has declared June 19th an official state holiday as a result of all of the protest and deep dive into our racial inequities and sort of the initial wound of these racial inequities. So it's very exciting that this holiday is being celebrated this year. So as part of the Juneteenth celebration in 2019, I offered a workshop on African-American genealogy using the Johnson Cardozo family as their family history as a case study. And in doing this work, I came across the concept of historical trauma as it applies to researching one's own family. Often when one researches their own family history, they uncover difficult and traumatizing truths. This is particularly so if your family can trace their ancestry several generations back to the United States. So, you know, genealogical research can force someone to confront the racial trauma that is, you know, the racial trauma of the past, from slavery to all the racism that it has engendered since. And so facing historical trauma is as necessary for African Americans who are researching their ancestors who were enslaved as it is for white people who discover that their ancestors were enslavers. So I really wanted to find a way for our library patrons, many of whom are avid genealogists, to explore these uncomfortable truths in their own family histories and try to come to some reckoning around racial injustice. It's really a way to show how genealogical research can help heal the trauma of slavery. You know, the institution of slavery is, of course, something we continue to grapple with today. So I decided to plan a series of workshops this spring that address this tension. I've invited Sharon Leslie Morgan, who is a genealogist, author, social justice activist and the founder of Our Black Ancestry, to give workshops on the subject of historical trauma. The first workshop in April will be on African American genealogy prior to 1870, and it will cover the concept of researching linked descendants. So this is the necessity of African Americans to discover their family history by researching the families of those who enslaved them. And Sharon's second workshop in June will deal specifically with the working to heal the historical trauma of slavery through genealogical research. So if you are at all interested, please check the library's website for more information and register. We'd love to have you attend. And I will turn it over.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. Sorry. Yeah, and we're going to turn it over to Muna. And then I think panel, because of the time, that we'll in terms of the last question, that we'll have Jason start in case we need to wrap after Jason, because I think he has some photos associated with kind of looking to the future. So Muna, over to you. Thanks so much, Alyssa.
Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you for this opportunity. It's good to see some people that I'm familiar with and to speak to a very supportive audience. My name is Muna Kenson. I'm the Manager of Communications and Programs and Events for the Cambridge Public Library. What we've tried to do is redouble our efforts to create programs that center the lives and experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. And we're applying the library's power to convene to bring the community together to address some of these issues in keeping with our strategic priority of welcome and inclusion. I'd like to just highlight a handful of those events for you. As Laura indicated earlier on, we hosted chef and owner Tony Brooks of the Coast Cafe yesterday. And as Laura indicated, it was not only a celebration of Black history through cuisine, it was also supporting a local business that has experienced some difficult times as a result of the pandemic. Last month, we hosted Kiese Lemon and Jesse McCarthy in celebration of the 46th annual MLK Day. And I applaud the library for maintaining this tradition across 46 years. As you know, Lemon's memoir, Heavy, an American memoir, came out last year to great acclaim. Heavy, of course, addresses a lot of the issues that are poignant today, including structural racism and its impact on the lives of those who are subjected to it. Tomorrow, and if you haven't registered for this, please do so. We are hosting author Danielle Evans, whose book, The Office of Historical Corrections, a novella and stories, came out last year to great acclaim and revolves around characters who are trying to navigate the burdens of race, of culture, of history, and of memory. Similarly, in March, we are going to host Ruby Hamad in conversation with Sahel Salod, a professor at Simmons. Ruby's book, White Tears and Brown Scars, How White Feminism Betrays Women of Color, challenges us to take a second look at some of the misconceptions that we have about the feminist movement. And finally, given our focus on virtual programs right now, we are exploring ways to make, to lessen the burden on our virtual presenters by trying to provide to them some of the technologies that they need to successfully host a virtual experience event, and also to enhance the experience for our community. At yesterday's event, the camera on the prep station, for instance, was one that was provided to us by our colleagues in STEAM and turned out to work out very well. I think that is all I have to share for now.
Thanks so much, Muna. Jason, over to you.
Thank you. So one project that I'm really excited, looking forward to the future, actually started in the past before the pandemic. A few years ago, we conducted a strategic planning process in which we did a really rigorous public input series to find out what the citizens of Cambridge wanted to see from the library. And overwhelmingly, one of the most common results was additional hours and days of service at our branch locations. One of the many remarkable things about the Cambridge Public Library is that in a city of only 7 square miles, we have 7 different library locations. So no matter which neighborhood in Cambridge you live in, you have a neighborhood branch that you can really feel pride and ownership over. And it provides access to folks that might not be able to make it to the main library. So we're really thrilled through the city's commitment to adding some new staff members that whenever we're able to reopen for in-building service, we will have a minimum of 5 days of service at all 6 of our branch locations. And that will include at least 3 nights of service at every branch location. And it will include Saturday hours at 3 of our branch locations. That's a really significant increase in the number of hours that those branches will be available for folks in Cambridge. I don't know how many of you have been to how many of the branches, but they have a number of really unique characteristics that endear them to their different neighborhoods. In Central Square, we have been working on improving the Central Square branch, which, as I said before, serves a lot of our most in need and underserved patrons. We've been fortunate while we've been closed to be able to replace all of the furniture inside the building so that all of the patron furniture and the desks and the chairs and everything be brand new for when we're able to welcome folks back in. We've also, in working with the Cambridge Arts Council and the Central Square Business Improvement District, been able to have a brand new mural painted all around the outside of the branch. It's by local artist Sylvia Lopez Chavez. It's really adds some whimsy and color to what is a concrete building. One thing that we're hoping to do in the future is do a full building program study to evaluate the feasibility of structural changes or even a brand new building for us. As you can see, we are currently part of the Green Street parking garage. And we do really great service here at the Central Square branch, but we'd love for it to be another flagship building on the same scale and beauty as our main library and our recently completed Valente branch on Cambridge Street, which you can see here opened up just a few months before the pandemic started, but really stunning, beautiful architecture and a true gift to the neighborhood. So we're hoping to do the same for Central Square at some point down the road.
Thank you so much, Jason. So as a wrap, before we open up for questions, we are looking to the future as well. There's so much that we've done just recently, but we're really looking forward to, I don't think we've actually really talked about the fine free pilot that we're going to be doing in the near future, as well as Jason talked about, the expanded branch hours, which is a big investment in on the part of the city. So please be sure to thank the city when you see different city leadership, because it is an investment mostly in staff. The Hive Maker space, it's going to be just so fabulous to be able to open that space. And then this major re-envisioning of the Central Square branch, and all of you, I mean, it's just amazing to see all of you who are just so invested in Cambridge on this call, and I think that with your support for making sure that we re-envision the Central Square branch and that it ends up being just as glorious, as the main library, the Valente Library, and all our beautiful branch libraries. I think that, as a collective, that we can really make that happen in the near future. So we cannot wait to continue to share our planning and realizing our dreams of a vibrant Cambridge Public Library future together, and to welcome you back into our 7 libraries post-pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria and staff. What an amazing presentation. I'm sure we have lots of questions, and I'm ready to start fielding them. So Laura, are we using the raise hand function, or are we just calling out?
I think we don't have that much time. We can just call out.
Okay, sounds good to me.
This is a polite group.
Yes. Well, while
Or you can ask a question, Susan.
Well, no, we just got a question. What's the time frame for the rethink of the Central Square Library?
Yeah, so the trustees and a lot of people here who are related to the trustees talk about this. And we did put in a capital request to create the building program. So as Susan and many of you, Nancy and Janet and many of you on this call know, the building, so instead of just designing the building, it really, the program itself, what do the programs and services look like, have to come first, and a lot has to do with community input as well. And so that building program and conceptual work, we were hoping that that would happen in the near future. And I think if we continue to talk about that, it will happen. We put it in as a capital request and it is in there. It's not going to, this year is going to be very limited funding for the city, generally speaking, because of less revenue, but it is in there. And so I think it will be the trustees and all of the advocates who are on this call to make sure that it's still at the forefront.
So Maria, can you tell the group a little bit about the little libraries that are planned in regard to your DEI work?
Sure, yeah, and Muna might want to also share. He's part of that group as well as Julie. But I'll just start it off and then Muna, I'll kick it over to you. So this is called, we're calling this the Liberation Libraries, and this is in partnership with MBK Cambridge. It really is a collaborative community project where there are, to start, 4 little libraries that are being built by a community member of color. So instead of just ordering the little free libraries, we wanted a local artist to be able to create them. And the library's part of the partnership is to help to select the materials and to be part of the planning team, and Julie's a part of that as well. Not only are these going to go out, and the first theme is Black Joy, but it's also our intention to have community conversations around these books. So Muna, do you want to say some more? Julie, do you want to say some more about the Liberation Libraries? And Susan, thanks for asking this question. The Cambridge Public Library Foundation is a big funder to this project. So they're actually helping to fund the books that are going to go into these little free libraries that people can take and keep.
So Maria, I just need to give credit where credit is due. That was Shippen Page's question.
Thank you, Shippen.
Okay. Yes, I'll chime in on for a little. So the ideas came about as a result of a policy council that the city was submitted by Councillor Simmons, the mayor, Councillor Malone, and I believe Councillor Nolan. Essentially, all the women of the council put this policy order in June 2020, calling on the city manager to work with the library to identify some places in the city to place these mini libraries as a way to continue to educate the community about this issue. And the library was pulled into this. We've met on several occasions with our community partners, MBA, Cambridge, to talk about the libraries themselves, the actual mini libraries, who will construct them, to talk about timeframes, to talk about funding, and Julie and another team of library employees have been really instrumental in putting together the list of books to go into those libraries. And Julie, please, you can speak about that.
Sure. So the idea is that we would have about 6 select titles quarterly for the libraries, and that would be what they were stocked with. And we would continually be refreshing them with the idea of them being talking points and jumping off points for our communities. So we chose one for preschool kids, and we've chosen one for sort of an elementary school group, and middle school and teens, and then an adult fiction and nonfiction title. And for the first round, Maria noted that the theme is celebrating Black joy, and we really wanted to show stories and books where sort of that were not ground in sort of the oppression of Black people, but in sort of the daily lives and celebrating the lives of Black characters. So I'm happy to, I have the titles. I could share them if you want. Am I allowed to do that, do you think? For the preschool one, we were going to use Hey Black Child, which is illustrated by Brian Collier, and Usina Eugene Perkins is the writer. For elementary school and up, there's a picture book that I am very partial to because it was one of my Caldecott honors, but it's called Going Down Home with Daddy by Kelly Starling Lyons, and it is illustrated by Daniel Minter. The middle grade one is The Jumbies, which is really popular, by Tracy Baptiste. And the teen one is All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. The adult fiction was going to be Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson, and nonfiction is Bree, The Letter to My Sons by Imani Perry. So that's the list for the first round. Insider information, people.
Thank you so much. So we have one last question. Could, I'm guessing Maria or someone, give us a little sneak preview of Voices for Justice, which is coming up fairly soon?
Yes, it's an incredible slate. Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ship, and I'm actually going to ask you to share the date because I'm trying to remember. It's in March.
March 23rd.
Oh, thank you. March 23rd. And what's so wonderful is even though this is a fundraiser, it's open to the public. And who doesn't want to hear Ta-Nehisi Coates speak, really? I mean, it's, I have to say, it is just, again, a testament to Cambridge and the Cambridge Public Library Foundation that they are able to bring in such a top tier author. It's incredible. I think we're going to have a fantastic turnout for that. Isabel Wilkerson is also coming in, and I don't know what the date is off the top of my head for that.
But if close to Maria, it's May 11th.
Thank you. Oh, great. Thanks. It's my eyesight is not great, but May 11th. And Isabel Wilkerson, she's one of my favorite authors. I don't know if you read A Warmth of Other Suns. I highly recommend it. It's about the Great Migration. It follows the path of 3 individuals. Very powerful, beautifully written, beautifully researched. And then I think many of you have probably read Caste. I'm reading that now. So again, like I think like really two fantastic, phenomenal authors, and again, free and open to the public. And then in April, and we're determining the date, is John Lewis's Good Trouble. And so there's going to be a film and then a discussion with various community leaders about that documentary.
And I think, Maria, it's good to note that Kelly Crossley will be moderating all 3 of those panels.
Thank you so much, Shippen.
We've really got the A-list, and it's just
A-list.
free and open to the public, and please circulate the word because we really want the community to be involved.
The link is in the chat a little bit far up, almost at the top of the chat. I can put it in again.
So I just want to thank our amazing speakers tonight and to say that it's always been my feeling that libraries represent the very best instincts and impulses of our society. And it's really great to see that they're continuing to work in spite of all the obstacles that are being thrown their way and the resilience that our particular Cambridge Public Library has in being adaptive and creative and sticking very hard to the true democratic mission of the public library, which I think we should all be proud of, and to be so grateful that we live in a community that supports and values its library. So thank you all for participating. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Susan. And I do want to say again, thank you to, there are so many people on this call who have volunteered and helped the library over the years. You know, as you all know, you get into the Cambridge Club with a record of community service and community volunteering. And for many of you, that volunteering has been for the library. So thank you all. Kathy Zuzi put in the chat to remind you all that our next meeting is on Monday, March 15th with Finch Cambridge. You'll get an email and a link. Janet was not on the call when we started. She's on the call now. Thank you, Janet, for your innumerable years of leadership of the Cambridge Library trustees. And thank you, Susan and Maria and the whole staff for this meeting. The staff actually has another meeting to go to. There's a program tonight about COVID that they're on their way to. So we will thank them and let them go.